to another episode of She Unleashed. She Unleashed is, of course, brought to you by Pumza. And I relish bringing you all these amazing women from across the world who come to talk to you about their stories, what they've learned, and to share the pearls of wisdom of what is working in their lives. Today, I'm too excited because I found a jewel, and it was during a journey I was undertaking for myself personally in finding and learning more about energy of people around us, energy of the environments we find ourselves in, and how to work best with energy. I tell you, your book found me. And I was not looking for your book because during that work, as I walked into Exclusive Books, I was met by her eyes, and a very bold cover that is talking about embracing your elegant power. So today our guest is Nicky Rowbotham, and she's coming to chat to us about her experience and what led her to write this amazing book. Nikki, welcome to She Unleashed.
Thank you, Pumza. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I can't believe how serendipitous it is that you literally just came across my book in Exclusive Books. I think that's always my favorite way to start a conversation, when it's meant to be.
And that was amazing because I looked at the author's name and I was so sure that it was an international writer or someone who's based maybe outside. I looked for you. And it was so amazing to get in touch with you. And what an open soul you are, Nikki. It's such an amazing, I really am having goosebumps from watching you and talking to you about this amazing book. So tell me as we start, who is Nikki and what can we know about your background? Because you talk about growing up elsewhere but coming back into the country. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. I'm originally from Durban, grew up in Durban, went to University of KZN, Pietermaritzburg, and then I'd qualified to become a chartered accountant. I
Wow.
always got interested in businesses. How do they work? What makes them tick?
Mm.
And so it was one of those things that I really was just fascinated in. I never really wanted to be a full-time accountant. I just loved understanding businesses. And
Mhm.
chartered accountancy gave me such a perfect window into that. And then I went overseas and was working in the UK, across Europe and Asia. I was fortunate enough to spend some time in Singapore, but then the sunshine of South Africa called me back, and the
Wow.
people. There's such an energy in South African people that we take for granted when we live in this country, but overseas, we really get to see a different lens. There's a warmth, there's a smile, the
Mhm.
double-handed wave. I often say you don't get that anywhere else in the world, and it
Mhm.
really always just makes me smile. And then I came back and continued my path into banking,
Oh, wow.
ticked the boxes on all of the qualifications, got the MBA in competitive economics and all the rest of that.
Mhm.
And, was really looking to make a difference and have impact within financial services, corporate South Africa.
Mhm.
And so moved into technology and operations and started building and fixing businesses.
Oh, wow.
But, our lived experience as we traverse all of this has a funny way of creeping in.
Mm.
And I'd suffered with some health issues due to stress
Yeah.
before COVID hit,
Mm.
and was fortunate enough to be able to heal. And I think when you start to step into that path of questioning how you've been showing up,
Mm.
whether or not the story we tell ourselves about stress and all of those things that we've built around us, a picture of success, whether or not it serves us, I think COVID really gave me the headspace
Wow.
to understand there's a different way. Even though I'm still in corporate, I've got many things outside of corporate as well. But the sort of need to share my story to help other people find a path to this quicker became a real sort of heart-led journey for me. I've realized how many people are on a similar path and a similar struggle to really start to trust themselves again and really start to lean into their self-worth and, as I call it, unshackle from the shoulds, as particularly as women in senior leadership positions. How do we redefine success for ourselves as opposed to this described picture that society builds for us that we think that we have to get onto, and rather find the things that light us up and tune us back into our innate elegant power. And so it really was a journey to share that with both women and men. But seeing women really step into their elegant power is a particular passion of mine. And I always said that if I impacted the lives of one or two people, I would have been successful in terms of getting my book out there. And the reaction's been really overwhelming and really heartwarming to see other people, almost, take the baton and run with it.
Absolutely. Tell me, this is your second book, so this is not your first book.
No.
And surely something inspired you on the first book, but maybe let's talk about this one. What inspired this particular book, the birthing of embracing your elegant power?
It was my own journey, my own lived experience. And everything I write about in the book has been my sort of journey after healing in my first book, where I sort of got my health back, got my nervous system back into what I call a state of flow.
Mm.
And I think it's amazing how when you've built that foundation and you really start to create that consciousness and awareness within your life around the choices that you're making and how you're showing up. But I think what fundamentally triggered this was when I started to lean into what I refer to as my knowing, my intuition. It was almost like the game changed. And the more I used that muscle, the more I started to trust myself. It's almost like, life just stepped up to support me. And everything in this book is that lived experience, that journey that I went on. And I realized through so many conversations with people how much this needed to be shared. To inspire someone else's journey. Not to say that my journey is everyone else's, but it's really, I'm hoping it's the catalyst. Someone the other day referred to it as Signal Hill down in Cape Town. And now we need the ripples to spread as we encourage more and more people, more and more women to step into their own elegant power and start trusting themselves and knowing that they're enough right now.
Absolutely. And this almost sounds so counterintuitive to what we've been taught. And you talk a lot about energy. You talk about the awareness of what you bring into the room when you walk into the room. What inspired all of this? Because it almost feels like you went through a spiritual journey to discover this side of Nikki, or was it always something that was in her, what that was in you?
I think it's something I developed because when you look at my background, as someone said to me, a reformed accountant with an MBA in economics, you were very heavy on the intellect and the logic and all of those good things. And I've always liked, working with the intellect and the emotions. But what I started to realize during this journey, because it was really when I surrendered, when I said, actually, I've tried to control everything on my path, that white knuckling through life where I thought, I could make everything happen by sheer force of will. But actually, the only thing that bent was me because I was determined to get there. And it was almost like the universe was saying to me, no, you're not getting it. There's a different way. And when I just said, show me the path to healing and show me the path to show up authentically as myself, that support literally stepped in overnight. Appointments became available the next day as I needed.
Wow.
It was one of those things where I just went, there's more here. And so really my approach, as you've mentioned, Pumza, brings in some of that spirituality. I believe in that blend between spirituality and science. And I say quite often when I'm talking to people is for so long we've lived heavily in IQ and EQ, the emotions and the intellect. But what I've really realized is actually the greatest wisdom within us lives within our bodies, that SQ, that soul quotient.
Yeah.
We have to ground back into our bodies because that's where some of the most incredible wisdom sits for us. And so I say that if we're just looking at IQ and EQ, it's kind of like a wobbly stool that's missing that third leg. And I don't ascribe any form of spirituality for anyone else. I often say to people, it's a higher power of your own understanding. And my religion is love, because I really do want people to be living their best, most joyful, most, fulfilling lives for themselves. But what I really realized as part of that spirituality and grounding back into our bodies is really, we know what's best for us. That intuition, that instinct, that gut kick that comes in. We need to start listening to that more rather than ascribing to external validation, chasing those gold stars of everyone else we think is the guru for our own lives. We need to recognize that actually we need to become our own guru in our own lives and start to tune into our own sort of sense of guidance, as it were, our North Star.
It's such an incredible message, Nikki. And I just am so curious to know, how are your mentees taking the message? How are the people that you coach receiving this message? Because it's been so understood that, the skills that we need to get are technical skills. We need to understand how to think strategically, and it's always been about doing, doing, doing. Now you're saying it's about being, getting into the inside, the guru inside. How is everyone receiving this?
It's actually been received incredibly well. And I
Wow.
think, that for me, someone said to me, people must be really looking at you going, what the hell has changed here? Because you've gone from this woman who felt like a tightly clenched fist to someone who now feels like, when I walk into a room, a gently unfurling hand.
Mhm.
And and I said, it's amazing how, I think people have seen the change,
Yeah.
but no one's questioned it. I think because I've owned it for myself. I'm not delivering any less. I'm not showing up any less. And I'm bringing that blend of actually real life skills back into people's worlds. I'm talking about boundaries being badass around building your own picture of success.
Mhm.
And we still have to get things done. That doesn't change within life. But it what matters most, to your earlier point, is the energy with which we show up and get these things done.
Mhm.
Because for too often, we feel, especially in corporate environments, an energy of force.
Mhm.
And rather than an energy of elegant power, as I put it, and power is an expansive energy, it's a magnetic energy. Whereas force is actually one of those low grade, dense energies where it's power over rather than power for the greatest good for all. And, force actually requires a counter reaction. It makes someone else sit there and either sort of shrink themselves or react back. And we end up in this antagonistic energy that actually just wastes energy
Mhm.
rather than us coming into a room and understanding that we can still disagree. But if
Mhm.
we do it with calm, clear, consistent kindness and say, actually, I see your point of view, but this is unfortunately not going to work for me. Holding that boundary for ourselves in a way that it's both you and me, as opposed to you or me. And I
Mhm.
think that's so much what I've seen for so long. And I think people, COVID was definitely a period where people started to tune in to what worked for them,
Mhm.
bringing life back into their lives, realizing that time is our most precious commodity. And if we live it saying yes to everyone else's wish as opposed to, saying yes to ourselves, we're wasting some of that precious time. So all of these tools in this book have both elements of that science and spirituality. They're incredibly practical when I talk about boundaries, when I
Mhm.
talk about, self first is no longer selfish. It's talking
Mhm.
about bringing our best energy, our best creativity, our most innovative thoughts to the workplace, as opposed to being attached to a cell phone, always on, and saying yes to everything that actually doesn't serve us.
If you were to walk me through just the high level principles of what this book is talking about, I'm trying to bring in a listener who has not gone through my own experience and having gone through everything. What would you say in a nutshell, this book? Um, what does it tell? What does it impart to us who are reading the book?
Yeah. Well, I'll start off by defining, when I introduced myself, I gave you the background at the start.
Hmm.
But actually, now how I introduce myself in most settings is I'm a woman on a mission to change the way that people feel about themselves.
Wow.
Because that for me is one of the most fundamental things we have to shift.
Mm-hmm.
And coming into this book, and there's a whole definition of elegant power at the front. I won't read through it now because it is a whole page, but
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to be clear as to how I define that. But this is a book about learning to trust ourselves again. This is a book about remembering that we're enough right now, that we
Mm-hmm.
don't need to hustle and achieve to become worthy. we're already worthy right now. Because if we sit in that place of worthiness, of self-love, all of a sudden we show up differently. We start to hold our center more rather than becoming untethered to everyone else's wishes and whims. And I think for me, that is why it's so essential to have that solid core of worth and trust in ourselves, because all of a sudden we've got that North Star to come back to as we start to trust that inner knowing, that instinct and intuition that we all have if we allow it to come through, as we start to say yes to ourselves by saying no to the things that no longer serve us, defining boundaries and redefining what success looks for ourselves as we step out of the shroud of societal conditioning, those shoulds that we've stayed shackled to for so long. And one of the tools I love using with my teams is I say to them, just even track how many times you say should during a day.
Wow.
That's a little signal as to how often that's been woven into your thinking. And I even catch myself still. But it's awareness. If we bring awareness to all of this, it's amazing how we navigate situations differently. All of a sudden, we're saying, actually, how does this feel for me? Not just everyone's telling me I have to do this, so I need to go and do that.
Therefore, you must do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And for too long, I mean, I know for a fact, I mean, in one of the chapters, in fact, I think it's the boundaries chapter where I introduce it saying, hello, my name is Nicky Rowbotham, and I'm a reformed workaholic. I used to chase the gold stars of everyone else's validation, external authority outside of myself for so long because I thought it was my measure of success. If I delivered more, if I made everyone else happy, then surely when I got to this mythical, title and team, massive team that I'd been
You do
chasing.
it all, literally. You're this rock who can do everything. So, you know what? I almost
But make me happy. No, I was
absolutely.
just going to say I thought it was going to make me happy, and then I get there and I go, not quite.
Absolutely. You know what almost contextualized the book for me, and I think I realized that I was wrong. I thought that you wrote the book as you were exiting corporate, but you corrected me now and said, no, I actually am still in corporate. And I'm wondering because it seemed so simple then for you to move into this field of saying, it's my energy and so on. I could relate because I saw a Nikki who was maybe her own person, entrepreneur, and she's deciding what she fits into the day. How does this fit into our typical corporate where there's running and there's still all of that mentality that you've had to work yourself and win yourself off? How do you engage now with people when you can see that in the rat race that you actually work yourself away from?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I have stepped away from the big corporate title and the big teams, but I've still got the level of impact that really matters, that really allows my gifts to come through, where I'm still, building and fixing businesses, delivering big projects and working with teams and coaching. I'm more of the wing woman as
Oh,
opposed
wow.
to just being the leader from that perspective. But since I've really changed how I work with energy, and I'm no longer strung out on stress hormones with my nervous system in a state of fight or flight. Mine was actually in a state of freeze, which is normally a state that they find wartime victims in, where your body almost shuts down from the constant, relentless stress that we sit in virtually 70% of our days.
Yeah.
I'm actually able to get more done because I am an entrepreneur. I run an incredible journal business called Inspired Change. I'm a coach and a speaker and an author in this work. And I still work, my well, I call it 8 to 5 because it's not really 9 to 5 in South Africa. But it's amazing how I've managed to make it work, and I'm still doing it with an energy that feels easeful. And I think it's because I've got this center within myself where I know what serves me and I know what doesn't serve me. I say no when I need to say no. I hold those boundaries as like the corner puzzle pieces of my life. And I've realized that our energy is contagious. How we show up impacts the other people in a room. I mean, I used the analogy the other day of a person in traffic. We all know what it's like when you've got that person who's stressed out behind you and hooting and trying to get around you. We feel that energy. But I've realized that you don't need it to even be that obvious. My teams have even commented on the difference, and they've said that it's actually taught them it's inspired them to hold their energy differently,
Mm-hmm.
to take those breaks, to go, actually, let me just check in with how I'm feeling right now. What's my energy levels at? Do I need to go and, walk outside and get a breath of fresh air, take 3 deep breaths, and then come in with an energy that's centered and grounded and intentional for what we're trying to achieve here? It's
And you
changed every aspect.
mentioned that in the book because there are so many aha moments I found in the book. And I was so keen to know how long did it take you to write the book, because there is so much research that came with it. It's not like your typical self-help book that talks on the superficial level. You relate your own personal stories, you break things down. I wrote to you at some point, I said, wow, Nikki, I just read one sentence and I have to sit and just grasp the lesson, because it breaks itself into 10 sentences and 10 contexts, because that's how powerful you've written the book. I can see there was a lot of prayer in the book. You didn't tell me that. I can see there was just a lot of prayer, because it's one of those books you can't put down. But at the same time, um, as you read through it, you pace yourself, because it really gets into you. It gets into the corners that you have not been maybe paying attention to, and you're like, okay, aha. How long did it take you to read? Because you also make a reference to a lot of different books and different authors on the books.
Yeah. Because I've been on this journey to sort of really transform my life and,
Mm-hmm.
restore my health and wellness, but also to change how I'm showing up in the world. Um, that's been a 4 to 5 year journey. And there's been a lot of reading that's happened through that.
Mm-hmm.
My friends get very upset with me because I read between 50 and 80 books a year. And the one thing I've taken out of my MBA is the ability to absorb those nuggets, those
Yeah.
sound bites very quickly and
Mm-hmm.
integrate them. And that served me very well as an author in this regard, because actually the writing of the book, because it's my second book, it was so much easier this time, and
Mm-hmm.
it literally flowed. I couldn't stop writing, literally, on because I wrote it in the mornings before
Wow.
work between 4
Mm-hmm.
and 7, and then on weekends. But on weekends I actually couldn't step away from my laptop. I kept going, I thought, no, we're done for today, and then I'd rush back and carry on writing, because I think it's almost like integrating within me for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very quick process to write the book, but the journey, it's a lifetime. And I think I did weave stories in from my lifetime to help support people on their journeys, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not about my stories, as we spoke about earlier. It's really to help support other people's realizations, their aha moments. But the reason the stories span a lifetime is to remind people that we've always been worthy. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't need to, tick that box in high school, university, job, corporate, in order to become worthy. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's why I really want to flip the perspective around. And if
Mm-hmm.
we start from that place of worthiness and self-trust, we've always got things to do.
Mm-hmm.
But, I often say, and I bring this concept through in one of my journals, it's time to be more rather than just do more, because otherwise we're always on the hamster wheel.
So tell me, had you had all this knowledge before getting into the corporate, how different would your journey have been into corporate? Because I'm thinking someone could be reading it and saying, yeah, Nikki, you can say that because you've gone through, you've experienced this, but for someone who's new and they are so eager to climb that corporate ladder and get the title, how do you think that your journey would have been had you not had you had the lessons sooner?
I don't regret a single ounce of my journey, because it's made me who I am and what I am today, and brought me to this point where I can share these perspectives. And people have to walk their own path,
Mhm.
and everyone's at a different part in their journey. So some people are lit up and chasing those titles, and they must. I think one of the biggest things I bring through here is, follow that full body yes. Where you go hell yes in your body, you're excited and you're lit up. We need
Mhm.
to be tuning into ourselves to follow those yeses, as opposed to telling someone else telling us we should say yes,
Mhm.
or societal conditioning and expectations telling us we should say yes.
Yeah.
But your question is so pertinent, because man, if I just really got my boundaries right and the ability to say yes to the things that light me up, not what everyone else expects me to say yes to, and being boundaried in a clear, calm, and consistent way, I think I would have navigated it with far more ease, as opposed to shrinking myself back, thinking I needed to make everyone else happy. And so, it's all of those things. I think it would have, maybe would have stepped out of corporate sooner, but I'm grateful I didn't. In fact, the fact that I'm still in corporate, because I have been open to saying, let me see where this goes, because maybe I'm meant to be a transition coach for senior executive women who are looking to do something different.
Yep.
But I don't think I'm done yet in corporate. I think there's more from a leadership perspective. And I think it's like a Rubik's Cube. I've got so many, so many things that I can bring to the table to support people on this journey, whether it be in terms of sort of, changing a payments infrastructure, but also helping people center back into themselves and living and stepping into their own natural light. I think there's so much around all of this, and my journey will still evolve. We can't just be one thing in this life. We are many special things, and I think it's almost like going through seasons in your life, going through different levels and different journeys and different ways we can support and have impact.
You wrote this book with so much vulnerability, and we spoke about it. And I said, the strangest thing is, I don't remember aspects of your vulnerability because you spoke about your lessons in order to get to a certain place in the reader so that they understand. And you went to such granular level of explaining your experiences. And it almost felt like I was sitting across a girlfriend when I was reading. I remember the excerpts where you were the one who was always planning trips, who was always planning the fun. And I could so relate because I've also been that kind of a person who is like the center of the entertainment club and always wanting everyone to be happy. And it was almost expected that you have to do it, and everyone lays back and they like that you're pulling everyone up until you stop and form the boundaries. How did you feel about pouring your heart out and being that vulnerable about your life?
It was hard especially in my first book, because I talk about those moments in the first book about sitting in that toilet cubicle, staring at your phone, not even being able to collect your thoughts. And I realized that I thought everyone had this perception of me as this person who was never got it wrong, never put a foot wrong, was always perfect. And I was like, and here I'm like pulling the curtain back and showing them everything that's been going on underneath, like that serene duck paddling on a pond, and my feet are sort of manically going beneath the surface. But it was the most liberating thing I've ever done, because I'm not sharing the vulnerability for the sake of it. I'm sharing it to nudge the realization in the reader. And so many people in the first book told me how much stories resonated with them, because I think that's where the humanness comes through. If I just shared the theoretical, that's not the lived experience. It would be another academic, theoretical, almost textbook on this. But we have to start to show the fact that there is no shame in walking these paths. There's no shame in having these moments of having slipped into those roles and those titles that people, other people want us to fulfill in their lives. And there's no shame in saying it no longer serves you and I need to step away from it.
Absolutely.
And it takes courage and it takes honest conversations to step out of those expectations. But that's where it's centering back into ourselves. And you'll often see me just putting my hand over my heart on my chest here. It's my quickest way to bring myself back into my body and remind myself that there's so much, love for myself and this journey, and saying it's okay, you've got this. And I love that as a technique in corporate. Often when people are dealing with tough discussions in a meeting, I say to them, just put your hand on your chest. So remind yourself that you've got this and you're enough in the moment.
Fantastic.
No matter what anyone else's expectations are that are coming at you. But those stories are the catalysts. And that's why I've also put through journal prompts at the end of every chapter, note pages for people to write their own reflections, because they're shared to nudge the consciousness and the awareness in another person, because that's where the magic happens for other people. You know, as I said, I want to help change the way people feel about themselves. It's a personal journey. There's no one size fits all. It's find what works for you. And so the vulnerability for me, I think, you know, I've really realized that we've all got those stories that we keep hidden. But by keeping them hidden, we keep them in shame. We keep playing small. We keep saying, you know, we need to keep them in the background. And just as a side anecdote, the cover of this book was never supposed to be me.
It works, eh? It
But,
works.
but I designed one that looked like my first book, which had a graphic on it. And I did a brand shoot in Joburg in October last year. And the photographer sent me this photo. And he said, I think this is the next stage of your journey. If you're really going to own your
So
own elegant
suited.
power, this is the cover. And I sat there and I went, oh, I don't think I can do it. And then I went, okay, I'm being tested. If I'm really going to own my own elegant power,
It is so
it's
suited. It is so appropriate for the book. And it shows such confidence. You know, there's something about your calm confidence, and it speaks exactly to the title. So it just matches the title quite exactly. Now, and I love that you went into every level of emotion, and even the exercises were quite triggering. It required one to sit and to take herself through her own, journey. I had notes in the background, and I kept on writing my own experiences about these things. And sure, I really would encourage everyone to just, trust me, go for this book and really, 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 take whatever you can take out of it. And we are all at different phases of our lives. There are such amazing nuggets. And I'll read you some because, sure, I just couldn't put it down. There's something about trust on your first chapter on knowing. And you say, when we stop over explaining and begging for validation of our knowing from others, we build faith and trust in ourselves. Commit to listening to your own wisdom and intuition. And as Ra Goddess puts it, you will grow in grace and rise in contribution. So if you were to coach me today and say, just growing your knowing, it probably won't be an easy journey. And I think you explain the practice of trusting and so on. Tell me about this journey for you. Was it as easy because you had gone through your own cycle? But that trusting, how soon does it come? What is the work? I suppose you explain the work. I'm just trying to sit and explain to someone that walking away from this, I walked away with so much conviction because you put together nuggets that just, somehow add up and they learn the lesson. And
yeah.
you can't walk away from this book without changing. You just can't.
Thank you. First of all, just thank you. I have gratitude that this book found you and that it supported you in some way, shape, or form. Leaning into your knowing is not a quick fix, overnight silver bullet process. It's like going to gym. It's that gradual building of the muscle where you start to kind of go, okay, I know that's the right path. And when the more you lean into it, the more it backs up and supports you, the more it starts to come through, because you're giving it space. And that's why I often refer to, our body, mind, and our emotions as that universal team,
Yeah.
because for so long we've ignored those little nudges that come through because someone else told us something else and they must know better for us. And so it is a process. It is a journey. There were many times when I got pulled, that ego pull of, but there's this and there's this title. And if I say yes to this, it'll bring me all of these things. But then I realized, and our bodies feel it. Our bodies feel when we're stepping out of that knowing and we're not standing up for ourselves. The words that we use, the thoughts that we have for ourselves, that creates the reality within our bodies. And so we know when we're not in the co-pilot, we know in the co-pilot seat versus the driving seat of our life. And
Mm-hmm.
only if we're listening to that real knowing within ourselves are we actually in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we're in the co-pilot, listening to everyone else. And so it's that gradual layering of confidence as we move through it. But the moment I talked to in the book was the moment I walked away from the big title and the big role, because I'd stayed there for so long, but dealing with a really toxic personality who was
Mm-hmm.
impacting my energy, my resilience,
Mm-hmm.
my health. And I just knew it wasn't making me happy anymore. And it was just such a clear moment when, and I talked to this in the book, where literally I had this image in my mind of dropping the mic and walking off into a forest.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I literally was like, I'm done. We're not doubting this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd been sent these little signals that you need to hold a boundary here, and you need to step away from this, because I tried everything else. I tried all of the routes through the corporate channels, and it's actually when something doesn't get done, it's almost like
Mm-hmm.
implicit permission for that behavior to continue.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still within my rights to say no. It is still within my boundaries to say no. And I just, to your point there, I didn't over explain my no. I
Mm-hmm.
just said, I'm done. No, no more.
Sure.
And there's power for ourselves because we try and over explain ourselves. Even when we're saying no to a social invitation, when I was growing up, I used to say, oh, no, but I have this. And I was like, actually, just say, thank you so much for thinking of me. I really appreciate it. I'm just not able to make it. And now I leave it at that. And I did the same in the work situation. Said, I
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been amazing, but this is no longer serving me. And I now go on to the things that really light me up, working with people that, just are the most incredible people to work with. And it has been a different situation to transition within the same space that I walked away from.
Yeah,
And someone said to me, often when people walk away, they, run off to you know, become an artist or something else, and they completely step out of it.
yeah,
But it's a
yeah.
very different energy to transition within and
Uh-huh.
still be showing up and doing incredible work and being, in my mind, for me personally, my definition of success is just exploded now,
Wow.
because it's service. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it's really saying that I think that we can change the game here and have that rising tide lift all boats from a place of service, as opposed to just, that one dimensional going after a title and and a team and monetary definition of success. For me,
Mm-hmm.
it's now, those moments where people tell me that I've helped change their lives and I've helped them navigate a career differently.
Wow.
That's better than a paycheck in the bank. The paychecks still come and the money still comes, but
Absolutely.
it's not my
Absolutely.
definition.
Absolutely. And you talk a lot about energy. And I love how your book was more focused on the person themselves. It was not talking about, it was not purely focused on the environment and the environment being responsible for many things, but it took an inward look of saying that it matters what energy you walk with into the room, because anything from there, how you will, you'll play the scene is also, and that was such an aha moment. I think I wrote it down. I don't know why I wrote it down, but it was such a powerful statement, because how you walk in that energy, it, it talks to how you will engage in the entire setup. Will you be hiding? Will you be behind the scenes? Or will you be showing in your power? And you're making such amazing and cute examples of how we hide. We hide in a seat that's behind, or we don't want
Yeah.
to be, in the forefront. You don't want to take the risk, and so on. So I loved the risk that you took in making it about inwards, because you can get a lot of criticism, of course, and we don't discount half the time that the environments are toxic. But I loved how you brought it back to say you have control on how you engage with the environment and building the boundaries, because that's what's most important. Saying that this, is not going to fly here. It's okay that you are wanting to deal with matters like that, but that's not how you deal with me. And that's what I found so powerful about the book.
Yeah.
So,
I was I just wanted to mention, because someone asked me the other day, what's the most important tool in self-care? And I said
Mhm.
self-ownership. Because if we show up with that energy, if
Mhm.
we hold that space for ourselves and say that we're worthy of holding space that serves us,
Mhm.
all of a sudden we know what's not acceptable and what is acceptable for us. It's that
Wow.
boundariness. And so for me, holding that center changes the game, because we're
Mhm.
no longer blaming something else outside of us. We
Mhm.
know we have a choice
Mhm. Mhm. And you
and we
touched
can make it
very
for
hard
ourselves.
topics, Nikki. I was so proud of just you talk about worthiness. It's rooted in the note, in that sense of self, a sense of sureness as we honor our innate knowing. But that sureness only comes with a sense of ownership of self, which is exactly what you're talking about. So tell me, what happens in instances where, I mean, we're coming from backgrounds where probably your sense of self was formed, but there is this thing of doubting yourself and doubting yourself. What do we make of that, and how do you transition someone who is still in that stage of, not knowing their worth, not knowing themselves, and being grounded in that?
Yeah. I often start with that awareness of the stories that have created that doubt, that
Mhm.
have made that person feel like they're not worthy, like
Mhm.
they're not loved. And I don't hesitate to refer someone, if they do need support, from a specialist,
Mhm.
whether it be a psychologist, because I'm not a psychologist. As I said,
Mhm.
I've listed my qualifications. It's definitely not
Uh-huh.
in the realm of psychology. But what I have owned and really worked through is those stories that we tell ourselves, and that we've bought into that definition of success along our path. And so
Mhm.
as you start to unpack them, it's amazing how that awareness just creates that consciousness.
Mhm.
And I often say it, and that's why I love that idea of putting your hand on your heart, because if you just keep repeating to yourself, I'm enough, I'm worthy right now,
Mhm.
like, and you love yourself, and you just keep put it. That's why it's about tuning back into your body, because we don't feel enoughness in our intellect and our emotions.
Yeah.
We feel it in the body, in the heart.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, for so long, especially in corporate environments, they work just in the intellect and the emotions. But when
Mhm.
you get back into that body, that's where you feel enoughness, that's where you feel the love and the self-worth.
Mhm.
And so that's why I love techniques like that, that you can work through. Do the journaling,
Mhm.
write down those stories. And I
Mhm.
often find when people start writing,
Yep.
it's amazing how things just pour out in that phase of automatic writing. And we
Uh-huh.
start to realize some of those stories. And it's a
Mhm.
general unlayering to
Mhm.
understand how those stories have crept in insidiously. And that's why those, understanding where you say shoulds. So that's why I also say it's not an overnight journey. And I mean,
Mhm.
I literally should have shares in Kleenex and tissue manufacturers
Uh,
for all of the work I had to do to
uh,
actually understand how much I'd kept myself small, and how much
sure.
I'd, kept myself at the back of, like, even though I was this massive leader, there was still that doubt.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it still came in. And there were other ways that I armored up,
Mhm.
thinking that that would make me good enough. But I
Mhm.
actually realized that, and just to quote Anne Lamott, who I reference in the book, I love that quote she mentions about the fact that a lighthouse doesn't run over the island looking for boats to save. It just
Mhm.
stands there shining.
Mhm.
And if there's one thing that people take away from listening today, it's that, be that lighthouse, be
Mhm.
magnetic. Know
Mhm.
that just keep reminding yourself that you're worthy with your gifts right now, just as you are, and
Mhm.
start to trust yourself and shine that out. And as you build that layering of that confidence, it starts to become almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy for ourselves, because
Mhm.
it is. It's that strengthening, it's that layering. But 5 years ago, I would have been like a lighthouse running all over the island, thinking that I could save everyone, prove that I was enough to everyone. It
Yep.
would have looked like fireflies all over the island.
Mhm.
Whereas now I just go, actually, I know that I'm enough right now.
Mhm.
By ticking that delivery won't make me more worthy than if there's a
Mhm.
deadline that gets missed. I'm going to do everything I can, but I'm going to do it in a way that inspires others to be themselves, that brings that easefulness, that energy of easefulness to how we get more done in less time.
And I love how you bring it home, and also painting a picture that the worthiness is not linked to financial status or anything. That okay, when I've reached a certain level, that's when I feel worthy about myself. It's about what I come with, whether good or bad. It's me. I own it. It's mine, and that's me. Because I think that's a notion that we probably mistake to say, look, I can't walk away from my job. I can't show up as myself. I have to fit in because I have to pay the bills and so on. But yet you're showing a different perspective of saying, trust who you are already,
Yeah.
and bring your own intuition into the game, because those are the things that are feminine that we have been told or have been taught to leave behind, and really count on this masculine power of being the authority figure and being everywhere, and you show your power, you impose, but yet you say bring it back. You don't have
Yeah.
to. You're a lighthouse. You don't have to impose or
No.
speak
And
to.
no, and it's finding how your power shows up authentically for yourself. Because I think we've all got masculine and feminine energy within us. The problem is, to your point, I think we've showed up with a balance of that power that isn't necessarily natural to a lot of us. And it starts to impact our health, our energy, our resilience, how we feel, how we show up in our relationships. And as I
Mhm,
said to someone, I said, it's not about then becoming all sort of like flowy and floating off into an art commune as, a woman or a feminine energy.
mhm.
It's about bringing the balance back,
Yeah.
knowing there's times that we've got to be that person, and doing it with an authority within ourselves, that we
Mhm,
don't need to
mhm,
prove it to anyone else. And I think there's going to be a rebalancing of that feminine and masculine energy, because we need both. We
mhm.
need women to be showing up as in that strong, I call it empress or queen like energy,
Uh-huh.
because that's magnetic and powerful. And
Mhm,
you don't know how many women you're inspiring when you show them that there's this way to just go, no,
mhm, mhm,
we don't have to get angry. We don't
mhm,
have to get emotional. And
mhm,
but it's okay if you do, because those are all aspects of us. And we need to stop thinking that we have to fit into a mold and a box and only have certain gifts in order to be successful. And redefine what success looks like for ourselves. Because I think there has been a picture that was painted for us, whether it be by family, social media, our communities, our colleagues, our friends, you know, success means different things for different people, and we need to paint our own pictures.
And I love that you mentioned the queen, because I refer to my women as queens, because there is that, you know, um, sort of assuredness in the queen. She doesn't have to shout.
Yeah.
They said a queen does not have to raise her voice. She decrees. She sends out decrees, and she counts in her power and the authority of her voice. And I think it's about returning to that energy as
Yeah.
women. Nikki, what's next for you? Because this book is really amazing. I hope there's a follow up on this book. It was a journey that was worthwhile for me, and I'm hoping that many women will, just take a risk, just open this window for yourself, and
Yeah.
just hear from another person's perspective the lessons around elegant power. What are we expecting to see from you next, and where do they find you if they want to follow the work that you're doing?
So I'm building some digital courses, some
Mm-hmm.
small ones on nuggets around boundaries. Um, we're launching a podcast, most probably a YouTube podcast, that will then go onto podcast platforms, because I want to bring on other men and women for
Mm-hmm.
them to share their stories about stepping into their elegant power. Because to your point, that's the inspiration that I want to bring to people, that this is accessible to everyone. And there is a third book in the mix. I'm kind of trying to ignore it for now. I'm just writing all the notes as they come through. But yeah, people can find me at my website, nickyrobotham.com, on
Uh-huh.
Instagram or TikTok under at Nicky Rowbotham. And obviously, my book is available in all good bookstores in South Africa, on Amazon, Kindle, audiobook format.
Mhm.
So I want to give people the formats that work for them, because everyone works in different ways.
Fantastic. And you've been doing a lot of events. I don't know if you've stopped with those. Was it during the launch of the book?
Yeah, so those were really around, I call it, creating that energetic presence for the book and launching it into the world. So there were a lot of events in sort of March, April around that.
Hmm.
But there are speaking events, and obviously I'll keep people updated on social media around that. Looking to do some collaborations with some amazing women that I've been working with in very different spheres. Because I do think we need to look at how we bring this
Hmm.
elegant power through, how we reclaim our resilience as well, especially after COVID and
Hmm.
a flying start to 2022, because I think there are so many inspiring examples of incredible women that we can bring out there around how we start to nourish our body, mind, and soul and really show up as our authentic selves.
Fantastic. Nikki, this was really amazing for me. And, it's always amazing to see the person behind the book. And I said to you, I almost feel like I know you because you've let out the most vulnerable aspects about you. But I like also your energy in how you are really looking at making a change, especially for women. Queens, you deserve to give yourself this gift. This is amazing. And please do follow the author. There's a lot of work she's doing around the elegant power of you as the empress, as the queen, and how you can navigate your space in a corporate environment with power. Thank you so much, Nikki, and I look forward to seeing your future work.
Thanks, Pumsa. I so appreciate your support.